Hello from cyberspace. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is for you as you're watching this short slide presentation. My name is Ron Olson and I am the chairman of the rules for the Sun City Grand Men's Club. And this presentation is very short, but it covers some of the revisions as it relates to the rules of golf for 2012. 2012 revisions, understand this, the rules of golf booklet has been changed and it's effective every 4 years. This is done through a coordinated effort between the R&A and the USGA, and it's done every 4 years after many meetings, and I don't want to bore you with all the results. The decisions of golf include new decisions, revised decisions, and changes that are made every 2 years, because we realize that the rules of golf are dynamic and they do change from time to time. So the decisions on the rules of golf come out every 2 years. It's also a new year for the decisions book. One of the big things that we'll talk about here is addressing the golf ball. In the past, a player, in order to address a golf ball, had to take his stance and ground the club. Or in a hazard, if the player just took his stance, he is deemed to have been addressing the golf ball. The R&A and the USGA cleaned that language up quite a bit so that it has been revised to state that a ball has been addressed when the player has grounded the club either immediately in front of or immediately behind the golf ball. Irregardless whether you're taking your stance or not, once you place that club either in front of or behind the golf ball, you have been deemed to have addressed the golf ball as it relates to Rule 18-2B. Another change, or clarification if you will, about when a ball is lost. Part C of the rule as it relates to the lost golf ball has been amended to state that if a player puts another ball into play under penalty of stroke and distance using Rule 26-1A, 27-1, or 28A, the original ball is deemed to be lost. What that does is it clarifies for the player that under the water hazard rule, once they drop a golf ball, the original ball is deemed to be lost. Under stroke and distance, it's deemed to be lost. Or under Rule 28A, where the player returns to his original location to play another shot on an unplayable ball, once a ball is put into play, the other ball is deemed to be lost. Even if it's found, it is deemed to be lost. Starting times have been amended under Rule 6-3A. Prior to 2012, a player was disqualified for being late to his or her starting time unless the 5-minute grace period had been adopted as a condition of the competition. Well, in 2012, the rulebook is amended to state that if a player arrives within 5 minutes after the starting time, the penalty of loss of hole or in match play or a 2-stroke penalty in stroke play shall be imposed. So a committee no longer had to adopt this as part of their conditions of competition. It is now part of the rule under 6-3A. It should also be noted that if you tee off before your starting time, the rule also applies. In other words, you could be penalized 2 strokes in stroke play or loss of hole in match play for teeing off prior to your starting time. Under Rule 18-2B, a ball moving after address, a new exception that if the ball moves after the player has addressed the ball, he would incur a penalty of 1 stroke unless it is virtually certain that the player did not cause the ball to move. What does that mean? What does it mean to us, the average golfer? If wind, water, or some other agency other than gravity caused the ball to move, there is no penalty. It would have to be a very windy day for wind to have caused the ball to move. Remember, under the rules of golf, the definition of a ball moving is that the ball leaves its location and comes to rest in any other place. So the ball would have to move from one spot on a putting green or one spot in the grass to another spot. This was actually added to aid in the PGA Tour events where the greens are extremely fast, and as you know from watching television, occasionally it's extremely windy. And as a result, on a very fast green on a very windy day, it's very easy for a ball to roll a distance after it has been deemed to be at rest. In those cases where the movement of the ball was directly attributable to something like wind, the player would not be penalized, but the ball would be played from its new location because the player didn't cause it to move, so therefore there's no need to replace the ball back to its original location. The meaning of the sole purpose of caring for the course. Many of you have heard on TV that a player can now rake a sand bunker as long as he's doing it for the sole purpose of caring for the course and not intentionally influencing the movement of the ball or the physical conditions that affect their play. Some of you have interpreted that to mean that if I'm going to care for the course, I can do anything. I can rake all the way around my golf ball. It's okay. Well, it's not. The decision is very specific. It allows you to do things like rake a bunker if your ball is in the bunker and it's not going to affect your line of play or the way you're going to play this shot that you're going to play. A rules official or a referee would look at why are you doing it? Are you actually doing it for the sole purpose of caring for the course? Or are you doing it to see how hard the sand is or how soft the sand is for your playing of your next shot? So it's not as wide open as people tend to think it is. We are interested in caring for the course. However, there are other considerations like line of play or testing the conditions that would be under consideration. Rule 13-2, improving the lie of the area of intended stance or swing, must not improve that area. The rules describe some examples that are prohibited by action of the player, and if you're interested, they are as follows. Pressing the club down on the ground. For example, if you're in the fairway or through the green, as we would refer to it in the rules, or you're in the rough, which is also through the green, pressing your club down with force to force the ball to be more fluffed is a breach of the rules. A club is deemed to be grounded in the rough, for example, when the weight of the club is being supported by the grass. Moving, bending, breaking, anything growing or fixed, including a immovable obstruction or objects defining out of bounds. That could be a breach of Rule 13-2. Creating or eliminating irregularities of surface, except on a teeing ground, just creating or eliminating the surface irregularities, again, these are prohibited by Rule 13-2. Removing or pressing down sand, soil, replacing divots into or other cut turf placed into position prior to dropping a golf ball. That could be a breach of 13-2. Removing dew, frost, or water from your line of play. Again, that is a breach of 13-2, except in one location, and that is on a teeing ground. Clarifications to improve. If you really want to look at the entire list or some of the changes that were made, go to decision 13-2/0.5, and that really clarifies for you the meaning to improve. It means to change for the better. The player gains a potential advantage of the lie of ball, the area of intended swing, the line of play, or an extension of that line where the ball is to be placed or dropped. So if you review that decision, it will help to clarify what it means to improve your area of intended swing or your line of play. And if I get a chance later, I will post that change on the internet. Rule 13-4, a ball in a hazard, some of the prohibited actions. At any time a player may smooth sand or soil in a hazard, provided it is for the sole purpose of caring for the course. And here's the key. And nothing is done to breach 13-2 with respect to their next stroke. So, for example, if the rake lies between the hole and your ball location in a bunker, you can't walk forward, pick up the rake, and then say, I'm going to rake this area between the hole and my ball because I'm caring for the course. That would be a breach of 13-4 and a breach of 13-2. Another note under Rule 20-7, which is playing from the wrong place. The statement exists that when a ball is played from the wrong place, there's no additional penalty for improper substitution. So if you substituted a golf ball in the wrong place, we're not going to assess two penalties, one for substituting a wrong ball and for playing from the wrong place. So we're not going to charge you for that substitution. We're not going to penalize you additionally for the substitution. The amended note states that there is no additional penalty for dropping a ball when placing is required or placing a ball when dropping is required. These improper actions will put or by dropping in an improper manner, like for example dropping it from your waist height instead of shoulder height, or putting a ball in play by any other person when not permitted. So if you're already being in breach of playing from the wrong place, there'll be no additional penalty under Rule 15 as it relates to illegal substitution, or when we talk about dropping under Rule 20, if you're dropping it in the wrong manner or the wrong person drops it, there's no additional penalty. And the meaning of known or virtually certain, a little clarification under Rule or Decision 26-1/1, there must be knowledge or virtual certainty that a ball not found, that it lies in a water hazard. It must be considered to be lost if there's no virtual certainty. So virtual certainty implies that there may be some doubt as to the location. But it also means that based on all readily available information, there is nowhere that the ball could be except in the water hazard. That's why most of our hazards around the golf course here at Sun City Grand are closely mown, so that there's no doubt that your ball isn't hung up at high rough, isn't hung up in a bush, isn't hiding in a bush somewhere, that it's known that it's actually in the water hazard, so you can proceed under Rule 26 instead of having to go back under Stroke and Distance Rule 27. So it's a little bit of a clarification of the rule. A new decision, and this does not affect us for the most part, but it is a new decision, and it came up as a result of incidents on the PGA Tour. A player is unaware of a penalty that he incurred. And here's the example. Here's the decision. A decision clarifies that if the competitor could not reasonably have known or discovered facts resulting in the breach of the rules, the committee would be justified in waiving disqualification and adding the two-stroke penalty, or the proper penalty, whatever it was, one or two strokes, to the score of the player for that hole. What are we talking about? On the PGA Tour, we have a ball that moves because the wind blows it, and it moves it such a small distance the player doesn't notice it, but a high-speed camera does. Or a player hits a ball and double hits it, and as a result of high-speed photography, we find out later that the player did in fact hit the ball twice, rather than charging the player with a disqualification because the card is signed, we're just going to add the appropriate penalty, be it 1 or 2 strokes, to that hole so that the player can continue in the tournament. It's a result of some high-profile players on the PGA Tour who are penalized due to high-speed photography in most cases. Remember, that's not going to apply to us in very, very, very few cases where a card is returned and then later on it was determined that a penalty was incurred that he didn't know or discovered the facts later. Again, mostly a PGA Tour thing. And distance measuring devices under Appendix 4. We do have a local rule in effect that allows you to use a SkyCaddie or some other similar device, a Golf Buddy or whatever. But when you're using a multifunctional device with distance measuring, remember that we can't use anything that indicates slope. We can't indicate anything that would register wind. And it's improper to use anything that would be a level or to actually use a compass during the round. Now, a compass in and of itself, if it's on your golf cart and you're not using it for purposes of determining anything as it relates to the playing of the golf that day, the possession of that compass is not a breach. But when we're talking about these multifunctional devices, for example, an iPhone may have an application on it that allows you to use it for golf, as far as distance measuring. Just make sure that you're not using or that there are no other devices on that phone that would allow you to gather any other additional information, because you would be in breach of the rules. Especially if you use that device in one of the AGA events, be it a sectional event, a senior event, and you decide to take your phone with you and use that golf device for determining distance on your phone. If the phone also had a compass on it, or if the phone had a level on it, you would be in breach and be disqualified from the tournament. If you have any questions about some of these, and I'll be posting more of these as time goes on, if you have any other questions, by all means, please send an email to me at raolson@cox.net, and I'll get to those as quickly as possible, and also pose the answer not just to you, but to other Men's Club members. Thanks for listening, and have a wonderful day.